Diabetes Revolution podcast with Dr. Sarah Townley, the type 2 diabetes coach, clinical pharmacist, and mom of 6 angels. You don't have to struggle and fight with your blood sugars for the rest of your life. I'm here to teach you the skills you need to control and even reverse this disease. There is such a thing as getting off your meds and creating a future free from diabetes. And you can have it too. Let's get down to business. Hey, my dear friends, I'm back today, and it is in Montana, the first day it's going to snow where I live. And I know that it means that the winter is coming, and it's not my favorite season, but you can't deny it's such a magical, beautiful thing to look out your window and see these beautiful white snowflakes just falling out of the sky. All right, so today I want to talk to you about something that I notice you really need to hear, because I want to just show you how often you might look at your situation when you have type 2 diabetes and feel very disempowered, feel almost hopeless, having some despair at times, because it just feels like you don't have any options. That what you're being offered in healthcare is like your only option. And today I want to show you how that's totally not true. And I want to help you feel empowered so that you can start to take powerful action in the direction you really want to go in your life when it comes to your health in your future. Because there's really nothing worse than feeling like you don't have options, right? When you feel like you don't have options, it's like you're backed into a corner and you don't see any way out except the only way out is the way you don't want to go. That makes you feel trapped, and it makes you feel hopeless, and it's a bad feeling. And the reason why it feels so bad to us is because this feeling of being trapped and hopeless is in direct conflict with our greatest divine gift, which is our free will, right? Our right to choose what direction we want to go, what we want in our lives. And what all of us are actually seeking underneath all of those choices that we make day in and day out, what we really want to feel is freedom. And we seek this through our empowered decisions. Now, I want to contrast this human nature, this human need, and our human design to what it feels like to have diabetes for most people. So the first thing that typically happens when you find out you have diabetes is that you're receiving a diagnosis, right? You're in a doctor's office or you're in a healthcare facility and you are given information. You're told this news that you have this condition. And for most of us, this is life-altering, right? It shatters our reality, it rearranges the pieces, and everything feels different than it was before after we receive this news. Because essentially what's happening is they're changing your identity when they give you this diagnosis, right? You carry this label around that you have type 2 diabetes. And we integrate this label into our identity, how we think of ourselves, how we identify in the world, how other people look at us. And this is a different and life-altering way of identifying. Right? Because you're told you have a chronic disease and you're going to have it for the rest of your life. Sometimes you even feel like you're being blamed for this, or sometimes it can be the total opposite. You're told that, hey, it's in your genes and there's really nothing you could do about it, that this was some kind of unavoidable circumstance that was just, waiting to happen. And both of this situation of being blamed and told you have this chronic disease for the rest of your life, or the alternative where you're just told that you were always going to get it. It was nothing you could ever do, and it was fate. Both of these are extremely disempowering places to be because you don't feel like you have any control over in either of these circumstances. Most of the time, we're told not only that we're going to have this disease for the rest of our lives, but that we're going to have to take medications, right? We're going to have to start taking prescriptions and that there's going to be more and more of these. And sometimes you get, straight up put on insulin, multiple injections a day. It completely changes your day-to-day routine, and it affects all the decisions you're making in every moment that have to do with food, physical activity. You're having to take medications multiple times a day and check your blood sugar all the time. So it alters your every moment experience in your body as you progress and go forward in your life. You're told you're going to have to give up blood and urine on a regular basis. You've got to go to the doctor like every 3 months, maybe for the rest of your life. You're sometimes referred to different specialists, different nutritionists or educators, and you're going to have to pay whatever it costs, right? Because you don't have any options. And if you have insurance, sometimes you're even further limited to a network or a formulary of drugs. And you're told you've got to lose weight and you've got to change your diet, right? But no one's actually taking the time to stop and sit down with you, to listen to you. No one's helping you process your thoughts and your feelings about the situation so that you can integrate it into your mind and start to come up with questions that you need answered. No one's explaining to you your disease process, helping you understand the treatments that you're being offered and how some of those are better than others for you. No one's giving you options and helping you choose amongst those. Options when it comes to meds, what doctors you want to see, what kind of diet you want to follow, what kind of goals you want to set for yourself. You're often not asked what you really want. How you want to go about this. What do you want your goals to be? And then no one's empowering you with your ability to choose your plan of action, right? Now, you may be a person that has been very lucky and have been given all of this, but I'm betting that if you're on this podcast getting help for yourself because you don't get help from anybody else, you're not one of the people that's being offered this rare opportunity to be active and drive your own care. Now, what I want to tell you is that all of this is a bunch of BS, and I don't mean blood sugar when I mean BS. What's really true is that you're being conditioned to hand someone else all your power when it comes to your health. Our healthcare system is not designed to empower you to have options outside of it. The truth is that you're really the one that has the power, right? You don't have to do anything you don't want to do, even though nobody acknowledges that that is an option. You're the one that ends up deciding, right, what you're going to do and what you're not going to do because you're an adult. Your genes are really just a very small part of what's caused the circumstance of your type 2 diabetes. There's genes, there's our genetic information, and yes, absolutely, these can predispose us to different diseases. But don't forget, it's your environment that turns on and off your genes. This is called epigenetics, and your environment is much in your control. And so that's why I never tell somebody that they were destined to have type 2 diabetes and that it wasn't in their control. And even if it's being discovered at a time where you want to take control, your genes are still going to respond to your environment in a way that you intentionally design them to or intend for them to. And that's very empowering news. And it's really the truth. You don't have to identify yourself for the rest of your life as diabetic or a sick person, a person who takes all these medications. Anything you don't want, you don't have to identify yourself this way. Even if you have a label on your chart that says you are this person or have this problem. Your doctor is not the boss of you, okay? They're a paid consultant. They give you recommendations. They don't tell you what to do, even though they sometimes think they do. You don't have to give your power to these doctors and then relinquish all of your freedom, free will to do as you want. You don't have to take more meds. You don't have to get sicker for the rest of your life because you have options. And this podcast is all about showing you how true that it is, how many options you really do have. So let's just start looking at that. Now, you know some of the options that you have because they've been offered to you. They've been offered to you by your doctor or your healthcare team. So you can take the medications that they offer you, and you can ask your doctor to describe to you the pros and cons of your different options of medications. Most patients don't do this, but it is well within your rights to become informed about what the pros and cons are to the different treatment options that you have. You also have the option of deciding that these medications that you're agreeing to take are just a short-term solution. You can decide that you're going to help pick up the slack so you can feel better right away, like feel better rapidly by bringing your blood sugars down with medications, as just a short-term solution, because you can get off your medications. That is something that you can do, even though they don't tell you that at the doctor's office. And also, don't forget, you can decline medications altogether. That is also an option to you, even though most people would say, why would you encourage people to do that? The reason why is because once you give yourself permission to say no to something, you don't feel like you don't have options, and it gives you the freedom to choose amongst the option of taking the medication or certain medications or more than one medication, right? And it takes the pressure off and that feeling of restriction off when you give yourself permission to say no. There are also other options your doctor might be offering you, such as medications and surgery, or surgery alone, or diet options that your nutritionist, your dietitian in your office can teach you about. So if you're lucky enough to have multiple options presented to you, these are probably the ones that you're getting offered. Now, when you look at diet strategies for your diabetes, to control your blood sugars, your dietitian might offer you just one option, but there are so many options. You can go big or small, like you could go full-on keto diet, or you could just try eliminating some ultra-processed foods to begin, right? That's a small step in the right direction. You could decide you want to go fast or you want to go slow. You probably know what works for you. If you had the intention of losing weight, which would probably be in the right direction of reversing diabetes, you probably know what are some immediate steps that you can take in that direction. And you can decide if you want to do them all at once, if you want to just do one thing at a time. And it's up to you to decide that. There are so many different diets that have been proven to control blood sugars. So for example, there are low-carb, high-fat diets, and within that group, there are many, many options, right? There's like low-carb Mediterranean, there's ketogenic diets, there's just limiting your carbs to less than 100 grams a day. There's many ways to do a low-carb, high-fat diet. And then there is a whole food plant-based diet. And you know what? There's actually low-carb, whole food, plant-based. But most people, when they say whole food, plant-based, it's a high-carb, low-fat diet. This has also been shown to reverse diabetes in some individuals. There's also intermittent fasting, which is no eating. And in between, there's so many different varieties of ways you can go about this. And you can choose to follow a structured prescribed diet. I don't ever prescribe a diet for my clients because so many different diets will work. And the person who is choosing their diet needs to want that. They need to feel like that diet is going to align with their preferences, their goals, their lifestyle, right? Like maybe they don't like to cook, maybe they do. And so it doesn't really matter as long as the person is making powerful decisions toward what they really want. And of course, you can just build your own plan. You can decide that you're going to start by just cutting out refined carbohydrates and watching your blood sugars and then tweaking and adjusting as you see what your body responds to, right? You can just become like a scientist of your body. That's also another approach you could go. All right, so we've talked about meds. We didn't go a lot into surgeries, but that is an option for many people. And if the docs had their way, they would offer that to more and more people. And so they're really advocating for insurance to pay for more surgical interventions for diabetes. So there's meds, there's surgeries, there's a zillion different varieties of diets you could try. There's also exercise, right? So do you have to exercise to reverse your diabetes? Absolutely not. It is an option to reverse your diabetes with diet alone because it isn't lack of exercise that caused your diabetes, right? Now, exercise can be certainly a powerful tool that you can add in, and it can look like all kinds of different things. Which one's the best? The one that you like to do. Okay. And I just want to give you just an example from my life of what this has looked like. There have been times in my life where I wanted to work out really hard and I felt like working out almost every day. There have been times in my life where I just wanted to do basement workouts. I want to push play and do some HIIT workouts. And then I might switch it up and decide I want to run an ultra marathon and train for that, which just involves a lot of running with a little strength training involved. And lately, you guys, I just haven't felt like any of that. I felt more like taking gentle, loving care of my body, doing slower, easier exercises that are just really based on strength and flexibility and feeling good. And so this is looking a lot more like yoga, going for a lot of walks and hikes, going outside and engaging in activities that I enjoy rather than being in my basement and trying to be fit by working out with a program. And so these are all options. These are options for you, and you can play with all different ways with this. Now, it isn't just your option to get help from your doctor. Most of you aren't getting that anyways, or you wouldn't be here, right? And so there's a wealth of help and available to you online now. Don't we live in the most magical world where anything we want to learn literally is on YouTube? Sometimes I marvel at the amazing circumstance that we have in our current world where we could learn anything that we want to, no matter how niche it is, no matter how specific it is, simply because we have access to that information. You don't have to know somebody who knows how to do it. You can just learn it from YouTube. And we do. We've done anything from, finish our basement to learn how to gut a deer or kill a turkey on YouTube. And so now that we live in this world where there's all these options to get the information that you need and the help that you need, you have all kinds of ways to do this when it comes to your health goals. You can hire an online coach. There are many different ones out there. I'm an online coach. That's what I do, right? And of course, the reason why we do this work, why I do this work, is because of the experience that most diabetics have in the doctor's office that I described to you, right? Because when you work with me, you have somebody who's listening to you, that's talking about what's stopping you from taking action, helping you make powerful decisions with information that you need to make those informed decisions, and then helping support you along the way and showing you why you're in your own way and how to get out of that. And then there's all kinds of communities of support out there you can connect to. Within my membership, I have a community support structure there where you have people that are doing the program along with you, and you're getting live coaching, you're getting live support, as well as, Facebook social networking community. But there's all kinds of communities out there that you can gather with and connect with so that you have the ability to share your experiences, get answers to your questions, celebrate. All of that is very important as you move toward learning how to care for yourself properly and reaching your goals. And then don't forget, the biggest option that I want you to know about, that's an umbrella to everything we're talking about on this podcast right now, is that you can reverse your type 2 diabetes. You don't have to have this disease for the rest of your life. That's so powerful and so contrary to the option and the message that's given by modern healthcare in the United States and in most Western countries, right? They're not acknowledging that you can actually reverse this condition and no longer have diabetes. That is an option that is available to you. And you can do this with your doctor's support, your medical team's support, or you can learn to do it without their support. Okay. I don't want to say that every doctor is going to be an obstacle to this, but it does happen. And it is still possible for you to learn to do this without their support. So don't let that be the reason why you don't choose that option if that's what you really want. So when you look at all these options, medications is a short-term, long-term, or not even an option for you. You don't want that option. Surgical interventions, a multitude of dietary changes you could make that would move you forward, that would help you gain rapid control of your diabetes. Exercise options from easy and light to hard and intense. All the different ways we can move our body are going to help us reverse diabetes, control blood sugars. All kinds of options as resources for information. And then application, and then the community of support that you have out there to help you figure out what's going to work for you and what things you want to try, just based on other people's experiences. Now, how do you feel? Do you feel limited? Do you feel restricted or trapped? I don't think so. In fact, you might be feeling a little overwhelmed by all the options that you do have. That's totally normal, right? I don't know about you, but I like to know all of my options. And if I'm feeling overwhelmed, then I just start looking at which ones do I like the best, right? Which ones are the things that I want to try first? Because you don't have to know everything that you want right now. You can just decide that you want to try one thing right now. Now, some of you might say, well, what I would like to choose is to be able to eat whatever I want, whenever I want. But what I want to invite you to start to consider is that what you really want? Because that is a lifetime of struggling with diabetes. Maybe what you need to do is to focus your mind on the choice that you'd rather have something better. You'd rather have no diabetes, or you'd rather have security and certainty and confidence that your diabetes is under control for the rest of your life. And so you choose to follow a plan that feels good to you, that doesn't include eating whatever you want whenever you want, right? But it gives you access to what you really want for yourself. When you learn that you are choosing what you really want, when you focus your mind on that, it feels good because you are saying yes to a greater desire. It feels in alignment with the future that you really want. That is sustainable. And that's so important because so many of us set out by restricting and limiting ourselves what we can have in our diet, and it feels bad. This is not going to be very sustainable for you for the rest of your life. And the trick is to learn how to make it feel good so that it is sustainable. But it takes training your mind because most of us don't do this on default. On default, most of us are saying things to ourselves like, I can't, I have to, I should, or I shouldn't. I say never should on yourself. Or we're asking questions like, why me? We're asking ourselves disempowering questions. And then what do we get? We get a barrage of negative thoughts. And this is why it feels so bad, is because our brains do this on default. And so what I'm inviting you to do is to begin to watch your thinking and notice when you are feeling restricted and limited, when you feel like you don't have options, it's a product of how you're thinking about your situation. And it's possible to guide and direct your mind to notice what you really want and choose that intentionally so that it always feels like you're getting what you really want. And so now I'm going to invite you to ask yourself, how are you believing that you don't have options? How have you been conditioned to accept what you don't want? What options did you hear about today that you want to give yourself permission to choose? Those questions need to be answered, and I want you to take the time to do that for yourself. All right, I'm just going to wrap it up with a fun recipe. This is an option that is available to you, and it is cold weather in some parts of the country, and so maybe this will really resonate with you today. Over the weekend, I made my family, at my children's request, lasagna soup. Now, you might be thinking, what? Lasagna? Can't have lasagna. That's pasta. Chill, chill. I got the hack for you that will make it totally low-carb dinner that will not spike your blood sugar. Because all I do is I swap out the pasta for some zucchini. And some of you might have a lot of zucchini around right now from your garden. So you're welcome. This recipe is calling for a mixture of yummy vegetables. So you're going to start with like carrots and onions and mushrooms and garlic. And then you're going to add tomatoes and some tomato paste. And you're going to boil with some chicken broth all of those ingredients. And then I like to add my zucchini in then and let it get nice and soft. And then you're going to pour this delicious soup, you add some spinach, by the way, over fresh mozzarella. Okay, and that makes it get ooey gooey. And then you top it off with some fresh shaved Parmesan, and I love fresh basil on top. It just is amazing. So I will put the link for this recipe in the show notes. And remember, instead of pasta, you're going to swap it out for some zucchini. I hope you enjoy that. And you have an awesome week, and I will see you next week. High five for tuning in with me today. You are getting smarter and stronger when you show up for yourself this way. You can get more free tools to help you control type 2 diabetes on my website, sarahtownley.com. And if you're serious about ending your struggle with diabetes, join my membership, The Diabetes Revolution, where you work with me in a community of people just like you. See you on the next episode.